What would you do if, one morning, you opened your front door to find a legal notice? Your husband filing for divorce, listing nights you spent at another man's house as evidence. How could everything flip so quickly when I was sure I held all the cards? The bass thumped through the velvet loop as I adjusted my black dress and scanned the crowded bar. Friday night in downtown, and I was finally out with the girls after weeks of Daniel's boring routine. Work, dinner, TV, sleep, repeat. At 32, I felt like I was suffocating in suburban mediocrity. "Philo, you're not backing out, are you?" Jenna Leary nudged me with her elbow, her voice cutting through the music. My best friend since college had that mischievous gleam in her eyes that usually meant trouble. "What exactly am I supposed to do again?" I asked, though I already knew. We'd been talking about this ridiculous bet for 20 minutes. Simple. Pick any guy in here and get him to dance with you. Not just any dance. Make it flirty, make it count. Prove you've still got it. Jenna gestured toward the dance floor, where bodies swayed under colored lights. "Winner gets drinks bought all night," I laughed, feeling the wine from dinner loosening my inhibitions. "That's it? That's your big challenge?" "For a married suburban mom? Yeah, that's the challenge." Jenna's words stung a little, but she wasn't wrong. When was the last time I'd felt attractive? When had a man looked at me like I was desirable instead of just there? My phone buzzed. Daniel's name flashed on the screen. "Hey babe, how's dinner? Don't stay out too late. Love you." I rolled my eyes and shoved the phone back in my purse without responding. See? Boring, predictable. He probably had my whole evening mapped out in his head. Home by 10, quick recap of my night, then his usual attempt at Friday night intimacy that felt more like obligation than passion. "So," Jenna pressed, "you in or out?" I surveyed the room, my confidence building. There, by the bar, tall, dark-haired guy in a fitted blue shirt. He had that easy smile bartenders perfected, but something about his laugh seemed genuine. He was probably around my age, maybe younger. "Him," I pointed. "The bartender." "Evan?" "Oh, honey, good choice. He's new here, total charmer." Jenna grinned. "But he's not going to be easy. Half the women in here have tried to get his attention tonight." Perfect. I needed a challenge, something to remind me I wasn't just Philo, the HR coordinator, Philo, the wife, Philo, the mother. Tonight, I could be just Philo, the woman who could turn heads and make hearts race. I made my way through the crowd, feeling eyes on me. The black dress hugged my curves in all the right places, and I'd spent extra time on my makeup tonight. Daniel had barely noticed when I left, just mumbled something about having fun while he channel surfed. "Excuse me," I said, sliding up to the bar. The bartender, Evan, turned, and his smile was even better up close. "What can I get you?" His voice was smooth, confident. "Surprise me," I said, leaning against the bar just enough to show interest. "I'm feeling adventurous tonight." His eyes sparkled with amusement. "Adventurous, huh? I like that in a customer." He started mixing something, his movements fluid and practiced. "I'm Evan, by the way." "Philomene, but everyone calls me Philo." "Philo," he repeated like he was tasting the name. "Pretty name for a pretty woman." The compliment sent a little thrill through me. When was the last time Daniel had called me pretty? Really looked at me and meant it. Evan slid a purple-tinted cocktail across the bar. Lavender gin fizz, sweet with a little edge. "Like me?" I asked, taking a sip. It was delicious, sophisticated. "I was hoping you'd say that." His laugh was warm, genuine. "So, what brings you out tonight? Celebrating something?" "Freedom," I said without thinking. "Just freedom." The music shifted to something slower, more sensual. Perfect timing. I could see Jenna watching from across the room, probably placing side bets with our other friends about whether I'd actually go through with this. "Do you ever get to leave from behind there?" I asked, nodding toward the bar. "Or are you trapped for the night?" "Depends on the reason for leaving," Evan said, his eyes meeting mine. "What did you have in mind?" Dance with me. The words came out more confident than I felt. Unless you're afraid you can't keep up. He laughed, that rich sound that made my stomach flutter. Give me 5 minutes to get someone to cover. Don't go anywhere. I watched him walk away, admiring the view. This was exactly what I needed. To feel wanted, desired, alive again. Daniel would never understand. He'd probably call it immature or inappropriate. But Daniel wasn't here, was he? Daniel was home, probably asleep on the couch with the TV on. My phone buzzed again, another text from him. Just checking in. Everything okay? I typed back quickly. Having fun with the girls. Don't wait up. His response came immediately. Miss you. Be safe. The guilt lasted about 2 seconds before Evan reappeared at my elbow. Ready for that dance? The dance floor was crowded but not packed. Evan's hands found my waist as we moved to the music, and I let myself get lost in the rhythm. He was a good dancer, confident but not pushy, letting me take the lead when I wanted to. You're full of surprises, he murmured near my ear as the song shifted to something with a heavier beat. You have no idea, I replied, feeling bold. I turned in his arms, my back against his chest, and felt him respond to the movement. This was what I'd been missing. The electric feeling of attraction, of being wanted. The music pulsed around us, and I let myself move with it, with him. His hand stayed respectful, but firm on my hips, and when I glanced over at Jenna, she was giving me an enthusiastic thumbs up. You're dangerous, Evan said when I turned back to face him. Only when I want to be, I replied, surprised by my own boldness. We danced through 3 songs, the chemistry building with each beat. I felt alive in a way I hadn't in years. This was what I'd been craving without even realizing it, the thrill of conquest, of knowing I could still make a man want me. When the music finally slowed, Evan leaned close. Can I buy you another drink? Rain check? I said, though part of me wanted to say yes. I should get back to my friends. I hope you'll come back soon, he said, his fingers trailing along my arm as we separated. I practically floated back to Jenna's table, high on adrenaline and victory. Holy shit, Philo! Jenna grabbed my arm. That was incredible. You two looked like you were about to combust on the dance floor. I told you I still had it, I said, accepting the congratulatory drinks from our group. Had it? Girl, you were on fire. I think half the bar was watching you two. Jenna raised her glass. To Philo, proving that marriage doesn't have to mean death. We toasted and I felt triumphant. I'd won the bet, proved my point, and reminded myself that I was still a desirable woman. Daniel would never have to know about any of it, but as we gathered our things to leave an hour later, I caught sight of something that made my blood freeze. A figure in a dark coat by the exit, partially hidden by the crowd. The height, the way he stood with his hands in his pockets, it looked exactly like Daniel. Jenna, I grabbed her arm. Do you see that guy by the door, in the dark coat? She squinted through the crowd. Where? I don't see anyone. When I looked again, he was gone. I shook my head, telling myself I was being paranoid. Daniel was home, probably asleep. He'd never come to a place like this, never follow me. That wasn't his style. But as we walked to our cars, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been watching. Saturday morning came too early, along with a wine headache and the uncomfortable realization that I'd have to face Daniel. I found him in the kitchen, already dressed and making coffee with that methodical precision he applied to everything. Morning, he said without looking up. How was your night? Fine, good, just dinner and drinks with the girls. I busied myself getting a glass of water, avoiding his eyes. You got in pretty late. It wasn't an accusation, just a statement. Daniel never accused. He observed, noted, filed away. We went to a bar after dinner, lost track of time. I tried to keep my voice casual. You know how it is when we all get together. Mm-hmm. He poured coffee into his travel mug. Which bar? The question caught me off guard. Daniel never asked for details about my nights out. Just some place downtown, the Velvet something. Why? Just curious. He finally looked at me, and I searched his face for any sign that he knew something, but his expression was neutral, unreadable. I'm going to run some errands. Tessa's at Mum's for the day. Okay. I watched him gather his keys and wallet. Daniel, is everything okay? You seem, I don't know, distant. He paused at the kitchen doorway. Just tired, I guess. We'll talk later. After he left, I tried to shake off the uneasy feeling. Daniel was always quiet in the mornings, especially on weekends when he had his mental to-do list running. I was reading too much into it. I spent the morning cleaning and doing laundry, trying to focus on normal domestic tasks. But my mind kept drifting back to the night before, to Evan's hands on my waist, the way he'd looked at me like I was the most interesting woman in the room. It had been harmless fun, nothing more, a confidence boost that I apparently needed more than I'd realized. When Daniel came home that afternoon, our 7-year-old daughter Tessa was with him. She ran to hug me, chattering about her sleepover at Grandma Paula's house. We made pancakes and watched movies, and Grandma let me stay up until 10. Tessa's dark curls bounced as she talked. She had Daniel's serious eyes but my animated expressions. Sounds like you had more fun than Mommy did, Daniel said, unpacking groceries. Mommy was out dancing, Tessa announced. Grandma said ladies need to dance sometimes. I shot Daniel a look, but he was focused on putting away cereal boxes. Grandma's right. Dancing is fun. Did you dance with Daddy? Tessa asked me. No, sweetheart. Daddy wasn't there. I danced with my friends. The lie came easily, though it made my stomach twist a little. Why didn't Daddy come? Because Daddy doesn't like to dance, I said, more sharply than I intended. Daddy thinks dancing is silly. Daniel's hand stilled on the grocery bag. I never said dancing was silly. You don't have to say it. Your face says it every time music comes on. I was being unfair, and I knew it, but something about his quiet mood was irritating me. Some of us still like to have fun occasionally. Philo, his voice held a warning. What? I'm just saying, there's more to life than work and errands and routine. Tessa looked between us with that worried expression kids get when they sense tension. I immediately felt guilty for starting this in front of her. You're right, Daniel said quietly. I should try to have more fun. His response deflated my anger. I'd been spoiling for a fight, looking for a way to justify my behavior from the night before. But Daniel, as usual, refused to engage. That evening, after Tessa was in bed, I called Jenna to rehash the night before. I keep thinking about that dance, I told her, curled up on the couch while Daniel worked on his laptop in his office. It felt so good to feel attractive again. You should feel attractive. You're gorgeous and you've still got it. Daniel's an idiot if he doesn't appreciate what he has. He's not an idiot, he's just predictable. Safe. Sometimes I feel like I'm disappearing into this suburban mom identity, you know? So don't disappear. Keep going out. Keep reminding yourself who you are outside of wife and mother. Maybe I will. The idea thrilled me more than it should have. Maybe I'll go back to that bar next weekend. Now you're talking, and if you happen to run into that sexy bartender again, Jenna, I'm just saying, a little harmless flirting never hurt anyone. Daniel doesn't have to know every detail of your girls' nights. After we hung up, I felt justified in my secrecy. It had been harmless. A dance, some flirting, a reminder that I was still a woman with desires and appeal. Daniel would never understand because Daniel never took risks, never did anything spontaneous or exciting. When he came to bed that night, I pretended to be asleep. He slipped in quietly, careful not to disturb me, and I felt the familiar guilt and resentment cocktail that had become too common in our marriage. Guilty for lying, resentful that I felt like I had to. But as I lay there in the dark, I couldn't stop thinking about Evan's smile, about the way he'd said my name like it meant something. Daniel hadn't made me feel that way in years. Maybe it was time to stop feeling guilty about wanting more. The following Saturday, we were all gathered at Daniel's mother's house for their monthly family dinner. Paula Vane had been hosting these gatherings for as long as I'd known the family, and they were always a mix of good food and subtle family politics. I'd decided to tell the story of my bar adventure, spinning it as a funny anecdote about winning a bet with the girls. What was the harm? It was just a dance after all. So there I was, I said, gesturing with my wine glass as Paula served dessert, surrounded by all these 20-something girls, and Jenna dares me to prove I can still turn heads. Daniel's brother Marcus looked amused. Oh no, what did you do, Philo? I marched right up to the hottest guy in the place, this bartender who looked like he stepped out of a magazine, and asked him to dance. Paula's smile tightened slightly, but I was on a roll. And let me tell you, we tore up that dance floor. I mean, we were like something out of a movie. Everyone was watching. I laughed, remembering the rush of it. Poor Jenna owed me drinks for the rest of the night. You danced with a stranger? Paula asked, her voice carefully neutral. It was just a dance, Mom, I said, though she wasn't technically my mother. Harmless fun. Right, Daniel? I looked at my husband, who had been unusually quiet all evening. He was cutting his pie into precise small pieces, not looking up. Daniel, I pressed, tell them how silly they're being. It was just a dance. Finally, he looked up. His face was calm, but I knew him well enough to see the tension around his eyes. If you say so. Oh, come on. Don't tell me you're actually bothered by this. I laughed, but it sounded forced, even to me. It's not like I ran off and had an affair. I danced with a guy for like 10 minutes. Marcus cleared his throat uncomfortably. Maybe we should talk about something else. No, this is ridiculous, I continued, the wine making me bolder than I should have been. Daniel, you're being completely paranoid. It was innocent fun between friends. You know, the kind of fun some people still remember how to have. The silence that followed was deafening. Paula's face had gone from neutral to openly disapproving. Marcus looked embarrassed. Daniel just stared at his plate. Philomene, Paula said finally, perhaps you should consider how your innocent fun affects your husband. Affects him how? By reminding him that his wife is still attractive to other people. That should be a compliment, not a problem. Mum, please, Daniel said quietly. No, Daniel. Someone needs to say this. Paula's voice was sharp now. Marriage means something. Commitment means something. Dancing intimately with strange men in bars is not appropriate behavior for a married woman. I felt my face flush with anger and embarrassment. Intimately? It was just dancing. God, you people act like I committed adultery. Philo, Marcus said gently, maybe what? Maybe I should apologize for having a good time. Maybe I should sit at home every night knitting while my husband watches accounting documentaries. Daniel stood up abruptly. Excuse me, he said, and walked out of the dining room. The silence stretched uncomfortably. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, and suddenly the wine wasn't making me feel bold anymore. It was making me feel exposed and foolish. I should go check on him, Marcus said, starting to rise. No, Paula said firmly. Let him go. Philomena, I think you owe your husband an apology. For what? For being honest about my evening? For not pretending to be ashamed of something that was completely innocent? For humiliating him in front of his family, Paula snapped. For treating your marriage like a joke. I stood up, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. I don't have to listen to this. Daniel's a grown man. If he has a problem with my behavior, he can talk to me about it himself instead of running to Mommy. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door, leaving behind a table full of shocked faces and barely touched dessert. In the car, I called Jenna. They're all acting like I committed some terrible crime, I vented as I drove home. It was one dance, one harmless dance. They're just jealous, Jenna said loyally. Paula's probably forgotten what it feels like to have a man look at her that way, and Daniel's threatened because he knows he's gotten complacent. Exactly. Thank you. At least someone understands that I didn't do anything wrong. You didn't. You're allowed to feel attractive, Philo. You're allowed to have fun. When I got home, Daniel's car wasn't in the driveway. I found a note on the kitchen counter. Took Tessa to get ice cream. Back later. I poured myself another glass of wine and settled on the couch, still fuming. My phone buzzed with a notification from our bank app. Someone had accessed our joint account. I frowned, opening the app to check. Daniel had transferred a significant amount of money from our joint savings into his personal checking account. That was odd. Daniel always discussed major financial moves with me first. We'd been saving that money for a family vacation this summer. I tried calling him, but it went straight to voicemail. "Daniel, what's going on with the bank account? Call me back." But as the evening wore on, he didn't call back, and when he and Tessa finally came home around 9, he went straight to his office and closed the door. For the first time since this whole thing started, I felt a flutter of real worry. Daniel was many things. Predictable, quiet, sometimes boring, but he wasn't petty or vindictive. He didn't play games or make dramatic gestures. So why did this feel like the calm before a storm? Monday morning at work, I tried to focus on the stack of employee evaluations on my desk, but my mind kept wandering to the weekend's events. Daniel had been polite but distant all Sunday, speaking to me only when necessary, and spending most of the day in his office, catching up on work. "Rough weekend?" asked my colleague Sarah, appearing in my cubicle doorway with coffee. "Family drama," I said with a dismissive wave. "Daniel's being overly sensitive about something stupid. Want to talk about it?" I found myself telling Sarah about the bar, the dance, the family dinner disaster. As I talked, I realized how ridiculous everyone else's reaction seemed when I laid out the facts. "Wait," Sarah said, sitting down. "You danced with a guy at a bar and Daniel's upset." "Right? It's insane. His whole family acted like I'd committed adultery or something." "That's crazy. You're allowed to dance. You're allowed to have fun." "Thank you. That's exactly what I told them." By lunch, I'd shared the story with 3 more colleagues, each time feeling more validated in my position. They all agreed that Daniel was being unreasonable, that his family was old-fashioned and judgmental. I tried texting Daniel around noon. "Can we talk tonight? I think there's been a misunderstanding." No response. I tried calling at 3. Straight to voicemail. "Daniel, this silent treatment is ridiculous. Call me back." Still nothing. When I got home that evening, Tessa was at the kitchen table doing homework while Daniel cooked dinner. The scene looked perfectly normal except for the Arctic chill in the air. "How was school, baby?" I asked Tessa, kissing the top of her head. "Good. We learned about penguins." She looked up at me with those serious dark eyes. "Mummy, why is Daddy sad?" My heart clenched. "Daddy's not sad, sweetheart. He's just thinking about work stuff." "He looks sad," Tessa insisted, "like when Grandpa died." I glanced at Daniel, but he kept his back to me, stirring something on the stove with mechanical precision. After dinner, after Tessa was in bed, I cornered him in the living room. "Okay, enough. We need to talk about this." Daniel looked up from his book, some dry finance manual. "About what?" "About you giving me the silent treatment over a stupid dance. About you moving money around without discussing it with me. About you making our daughter think something's seriously wrong." "Nothing's wrong," he said calmly. "I'm just reevaluating some things." "Reevaluating what things?" "Our marriage, our priorities, our future." The words hit me like cold water. "Our marriage?" "Daniel, you're being completely irrational. It was one dance with a stranger. It meant nothing." "Did it?" "Of course it did. What are you implying?" Daniel closed his book and looked at me directly for the first time in days. "I'm not implying anything, Philo. I'm just thinking." "Well, think out loud. Talk to me. We're supposed to be partners." "Partners don't humiliate each other in public. Partners don't mock each other to their families. Partners don't lie about where they've been or what they've done." "I never lied." "You said you went to dinner and drinks with the girls. You failed to mention the part where you danced with a stranger while ignoring my texts." The accusation stung because it was accurate. I didn't think it was important. You didn't think it was important that you spent the evening flirting with another man? It wasn't flirting. It was just what, Philo? Just dancing? Just innocent fun? Just proving a point? His voice remained level, but I could hear the hurt underneath. Just everything except what a married woman should be doing. I felt cornered, defensive. So what are you saying? That I'm not allowed to dance? Not allowed to have fun? Not allowed to feel attractive? I'm saying that you seem to need validation from other men more than you need respect for your marriage. The words hung between us like a challenge. I wanted to deny it, to argue, to make him see how wrong he was. But something in his expression stopped me. Daniel, I'm going to bed, he said, standing up. We can continue this conversation when you're ready to be honest. With me and with yourself. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling while Daniel slept beside me, or pretended to sleep. I kept replaying the conversation, trying to figure out where everything had gone wrong. It really had been just a dance. Just a moment of feeling desired, and attractive and alive. Why couldn't he understand that? But a small, uncomfortable voice in the back of my mind whispered that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't being entirely honest with myself about what that dance had meant to me. Wednesday afternoon, I was reviewing a particularly tedious harassment prevention policy when my assistant knocked on my office door. Mrs. Vane, there's a courier here for you. I looked up, puzzled. A courier? I'm not expecting anything. He says it's urgent. Legal documents. My stomach dropped. Legal documents? I followed my assistant to the reception area, where a young man in a uniform held a large manila envelope. Philomene Vane? Yes, that's me. Please, sign here. My hands shook slightly as I signed the electronic pad. The envelope was thick, official-looking, with the letterhead of a law firm I didn't recognize. Several of my colleagues had gathered in the reception area, their curious eyes following my every movement. Is everything okay, Philo? Asked Janet from accounting. I'm sure it's nothing, I said, forcing a smile. Probably something to do with our mortgage or insurance. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. Daniel handled all our legal paperwork, and he would have mentioned anything involving both our names. I took the envelope to my office and closed the door, my heart pounding. With trembling fingers, I tore it open. Petition for legal separation was printed in bold letters across the top of the first document. Below that, Daniel Robert Vane versus Philomene Marie Vane. The words blurred as I tried to process what I was reading. Separation. Daniel had filed for separation, without warning, without discussion. I flipped through the pages, seeing phrases like irreconcilable differences and custody arrangement and division of assets. At the bottom of the stack was a letter from Daniel's attorney requesting that I obtain my own legal representation. My phone rang. Jenna's name flashed on the screen. Hello? My voice sounded strange, distant. Hey, what are you doing tonight? Want to grab dinner? Jenna, I think Daniel's leaving me. What? What do you mean? I just got served with separation papers, at work, in front of everyone. I was whispering, afraid my colleagues would overhear. Holy shit, are you serious? Dead serious. He filed for legal separation and primary custody of Tessa. Over a dance? Philo, that's insane. He can't be serious. It looks pretty serious to me. There are like 20 pages of legal documents here. Okay, don't panic. This is probably just a scare tactic. He's trying to freak you out so you'll apologize and promise to be a good little wife. I don't know, Jenna. This seems like more than a scare tactic. Trust me, men do this kind of thing when they feel threatened. He'll cool off in a few days and withdraw the papers. Just don't let him see that he's gotten to you. But as I sat in my office staring at the legal documents, I wasn't so sure. This was Daniel, methodical, careful Daniel, who researched every major purchase for weeks before deciding. He wouldn't file legal papers on impulse. I left work early, claiming a family emergency. The 20-minute drive home felt like hours. Daniel's car was in the driveway when I arrived, which meant he'd also left work early. Waiting for this moment, probably. I found him in the kitchen, loading the dishwasher with his usual precision. "We need to talk," I said, slapping the legal papers down on the counter. He glanced at them without surprise. "I see you got them." "Got them? Daniel, I was served with divorce papers at my office, in front of my colleagues. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was?" "Separation papers," he corrected calmly. "And yes, I imagine it was humiliating, kind of like being mocked in front of my family for being a boring husband." This isn't, Daniel, this is insane. You're talking about ending our marriage over one dance. It's not about the dance, Philo. Then what? What is it about?" Daniel dried his hands on a dish towel, taking his time. "It's about the lying. It's about the disrespect. It's about the fact that you see nothing wrong with either." "I didn't lie." "You told me you went to dinner and drinks with the girls. You conveniently left out the part where you spent the evening flirting with a bartender." "Because I knew you'd overreact, just like you're doing now." "So you admit you knew it was inappropriate?" I felt trapped by my own words. "No, I mean, it wasn't inappropriate. I just knew you wouldn't understand." "Try me." "Fine." I felt attractive for the first time in months. I felt desired and interesting and alive. And yes, I danced with a handsome man who made me feel that way. It was harmless and fun and exactly what I needed. Daniel nodded slowly. "And how do you think that makes me feel? Knowing that my wife needs other men to feel attractive? Knowing that I apparently make her feel so undesirable that she has to seek validation from strangers?" You're twisting this around." "Am I? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've checked out of our marriage emotionally, and you're just looking for an excuse to justify it." "That's not true." "Isn't it? When was the last time you tried to make me feel desired? When was the last time you planned something special for us? When was the last time you looked at me the way you apparently looked at that bartender?" I opened my mouth to argue, then closed it. Because he was right, and we both knew it. "I want to try counseling," I said finally. "We can work through this." Daniel shook his head. "I'm done, Philo. I'm done being the boring husband who doesn't understand fun. I'm done being taken for granted. I'm done pretending this marriage is working." "You can't just give up. What about Tessa?" "What about her? You think she hasn't noticed the tension? You think she doesn't hear you making jokes about her boring father?" Guilt crashed over me. "Daniel, please, let's just talk about this rationally." I am being rational. For the first time in years, I'm being completely rational. He pulled a folder from the counter drawer. "You might want to look at this before you call your lawyer." The folder was labeled Evidence in Daniel's neat handwriting. Inside were printed emails, bank statements, phone records, and several photographs. My blood ran cold as I realized what I was looking at. "You've been spying on me." "I've been documenting a pattern of behavior that I think a judge will find relevant to custody decisions." The threat was clear, and it hit me like a physical blow. "You bastard." "Maybe, but I'm a bastard who's tired of being made a fool of." As I stared at the evidence folder, one terrible thought echoed in my mind. Daniel had been planning this for longer than I'd realized, and I had played right into his hands. The evidence folder contained everything. Photos of me at the Velvet Loop, dancing with Evan, taken from what must have been Daniel's car in the parking lot. Screenshots of text messages between Jenna and me, discussing the bet and my victory. Bank records showing the money he'd moved to protect our assets. Phone logs documenting every ignored call and unanswered text. But the worst part was the final document. A statement from Tessa's teacher expressing concern about behavioral changes, noting that our daughter had become withdrawn and anxious, often asking if Mommy and Daddy still love each other. "You followed me," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I had a feeling something was off. You'd been distant for weeks, critical, picking fights over nothing. When you came home that Friday night smelling like another man's cologne and lying about where you'd been. I knew. Cologne? I thought back to that night, to dancing with Evan, to how close we'd been. Armani Code. I know what my own cologne smells like, Philo, and I know it wasn't mine. The attention to detail was so perfectly Daniel, methodical, thorough, devastating. So you what? Hired a private investigator? I didn't need to. You weren't exactly discreet. Your friend Jenna posted videos on social media. You told half your office about your harmless fun. You bragged about it to my family. I sank into a kitchen chair, the weight of my mistakes crushing down on me. Daniel, I know this looks bad, but it doesn't just look bad, Philo. It is bad. You're a married woman who spent an evening dancing intimately with a stranger, lying to your husband about it, then publicly humiliating him when confronted. I never meant for it to go this far. But it did, and now we're here. The sound of the front door opening interrupted us. Tessa's voice called out, "I'm home!" Daniel immediately shifted into father mode. "Hey, sweetheart, how was school?" "Good. Mrs. Peterson said I did really well on my math test." Tessa appeared in the kitchen doorway, her backpack dragging behind her. She looked between us, her expression uncertain. "Are you guys fighting again?" "No, baby," I said quickly. "We're just talking." But Tessa wasn't fooled. At 7, she was already too perceptive for her own good. Daniel knelt down to her level. "Tessa, remember how we talked about how sometimes grown-ups have problems they need to figure out?" She nodded solemnly. "Well, Mommy and I are having one of those times. But no matter what happens, we both love you very much, and that will never change." "Are you getting divorced?" The question was so direct, so matter-of-fact that it took my breath away. Daniel and I exchanged glances. "We don't know yet, sweetheart," he said gently. "We're trying to figure out what's best for everyone." Tessa's eyes filled with tears. "I don't want you to get divorced." I knelt down beside Daniel, reaching for our daughter. "Oh, baby." But Tessa stepped back, moving closer to Daniel. The rejection stung more than I could have imagined. "Can I go to Grandma Paula's tonight?" she asked Daniel. "Of course. I'll call her right now." After Daniel arranged for his mother to pick up Tessa, we sat in the living room in heavy silence. The evidence folder lay open between us like an accusation. "What do you want from me?" I asked finally. "I want you to take responsibility. I want you to admit that what you did was wrong, not just misunderstood or harmless fun." "Fine, it was wrong. I should have told you about the dance. I shouldn't have lied." "And? And what?" "And you shouldn't have sought validation from another man. You shouldn't have disrespected our marriage. You shouldn't have made me look like a fool in front of my family." Each word felt like a slap, but I forced myself to nod. "You're right. I'm sorry." "I know you are. But sorry doesn't fix this, fellow. Sorry doesn't rebuild trust. Sorry doesn't make me forget that my wife needed a stranger to make her feel attractive." "So what now? We just throw away 8 years of marriage?" "You threw it away the moment you decided that your need for excitement was more important than your commitment to me." The finality in his voice terrified me. "Daniel, please. We can go to counseling. I'll do whatever it takes." "It's too late for that." "It's never too late. We have a daughter together. We have a life together." "We have a daughter together. The life we had is over." Paula arrived to pick up Tessa, her face carefully neutral, but her disapproval obvious. She hugged me goodbye, but it was perfunctory, cold. "Take care of yourself, Philomene," she said, and it sounded like goodbye. After they left, Daniel went to his office and closed the door. I could hear him on the phone, presumably with his lawyer, discussing next steps in court dates and custody schedules. I called my mother, needing someone on my side. "Oh, honey," Cleo said after I explained the situation. "Daniel's just being dramatic. Men always overreact to these things. Give him a few days to cool off." "Mum, he filed legal papers. He has evidence, photos." "Evidence of what? Dancing. Since when is dancing a crime?" "It's more complicated than that." "No, it's not. You're a young, beautiful woman who deserves to feel attractive. If Daniel can't appreciate what he has, that's his problem. But even my mother's support felt hollow, because deep down, I knew Daniel was right. I had crossed a line, even if I hadn't meant to. I had disrespected our marriage, even if I'd told myself it was harmless. And now I was going to lose everything because of one night, one dance, one stupid bet that had spiraled completely out of control. The next morning, I woke up alone. Daniel had slept in the guest room, and by the time I got up, he was already gone. There was a note on the kitchen counter. Meeting with lawyer at 9 a.m. Tessa will stay with Mom until we figure out arrangements. I called in sick to work, unable to face the questions and sympathetic looks from colleagues who'd witnessed my public humiliation. Instead, I spent the day researching divorce lawyers and trying to understand exactly how much trouble I was in. The answer, as it turned out, was a lot. Daniel's evidence was comprehensive and damaging. The photos clearly showed intimate dancing. The text messages revealed my cavalier attitude toward my marriage. The timeline proved I'd lied about my whereabouts. Worst of all, Tessa's teacher's report suggested that my behavior had already begun affecting our daughter's emotional well-being. When Daniel came home that evening, his expression was grim but resolved. "My lawyer says we should be able to reach a settlement without going to court," he said. "Primary custody to me, with supervised visitation for you until you complete counseling." "Supervised visitation? Daniel, you can't be serious." "I'm completely serious. You've demonstrated poor judgment and a willingness to put your own desires ahead of our family's stability. Until you prove that's changed, I'm not comfortable with unsupervised access to our daughter." The words hit me like physical blows. "You're trying to take my daughter away from me." "I'm trying to protect my daughter from further emotional damage. Our daughter, who's been asking me if Mommy doesn't love Daddy anymore. Our daughter, who started having nightmares about her family falling apart. Our daughter, who flinched when you tried to hug her yesterday." I had no response to that because it was all true. "You have until Friday to get your own lawyer," Daniel continued. "We'll start mediation next week." As he walked away, I realized that my night of harmless fun had cost me everything that mattered. My marriage, my daughter, my reputation, my future. And the worst part was, I had no one to blame but myself.